We'd like to welcome everyone. Hello and welcome to this evening's forum. We thank you for joining us. We'd like to start with a few housekeeping details before we get in. We are offering American Sign Language interpreting and closed captioning for today's forum. To access the American Sign Language interpreters, you will need to look for their thumbnail and then you pin it. You will need to pin both. They are listed as ASL interpreter and then their name. To access the closed captioning, you should look at the bottom right corner of your screen and there's a multimedia box. You'll want to click on that and then you'll see the closed captions start. You can select the language, the font size, and the color that best suits your viewing. The forum is being recorded and will be posted on the OPWDD website on the strategic planning pages. We will start today with an introduction from Commissioner Kastner, and then we'll turn the program over to the Regional Director for the Long Island area. Once the Regional Director finishes their presentation, and that should take about 15 minutes, we'll then turn it over to the people who have signed up to provide their verbal feedback on the questions that were provided on the invitation. We will not be responding to any questions at this time to ensure that we have enough time for everyone who signed up to speak. If you do have questions, though, you can email them to info@opwdd.ny.gov. I'd like to now turn the program over to Commissioner Kastner.
Thanks, Karen. This is the fifth, actually, of 5 separate forums we're holding around the state to hear from the people we support and their family members. These events are being held in order to give you an opportunity to share your ideas and suggestions for setting OPWDD's strategic priorities for the future through our 507 planning process. We also want to hear your ideas for how best we can use funds from the American Rescue Plan to support home and community-based services. We are also hosting about 35 events with various stakeholder groups around the state and gathering their ideas as well. Finally, we've set up a dedicated planning email address, planning@opwdd.ny.gov, for people to use to send us their thoughts and suggestions. Anyone is welcome to submit their comments using this email address. We will gather all of your input through the spring and summer and then use it to develop a 5-year comprehensive 507 plan, a plan that's named for the section of the mental hygiene law that requires it. This plan will be our roadmap guiding our agency's activities and initiatives moving forward. We will also be using your input to develop a plan for how we will allocate our share of enhanced federal matching funds available through the American Rescue Plan. So again, thank you for joining us for this important work. Your voice matters, and I'm excited to listen to you. I want to assure you that I will be on the call for its entirety and listening, even while I glance down at my computer while I'm typing my notes. So now let me turn the forum over to the regional director, and we'll get started. Thank you.
As many of you also know, our regional offices are typically the first place people go when they access services through OPWDD, and the place they continue to come back to as their needs change throughout their lifetime. I want you to know how important it is for us for you to take part in this process, to ensure that we are providing you quality supports that you need and want, and creating equitable, accessible, and sustainable supports for the future. We need your feedback to help guide us. The people we support and the families who also support them are the most critical and important part of our service system. This system was built for you and by you, and we want to continue to ensure that we can keep meeting your needs with your guidance. The way that we usually get the opportunity to hear from you is through our regular public committee meetings that are advertised on our website, our social media pages, and through our mailing list. But today, we're here to launch another way for you to provide feedback. The New York Mental Hygiene Law requires that OPWDD, along with our sister agencies, the Office of Mental Health and Office of Addiction and Substance Abuse Services, develop a 5-year comprehensive plan, which is then reviewed annually. We know OPWDD hasn't updated our 507 strategic plan for a few years, which is why we are here to correct that oversight. We know that many of you, as well as our own staff, look to the 507 plan as a guide for our future. It helps set a path and expectations that we can all understand and follow. The fact is, the 507 planning engages all of you in the process, and that's exactly what we've been missing out on. We meet regularly with different advocacy groups all across New York State and hear from them frequently, but we know many of you aren't part of the advocacy group and often don't have the time for frequent engagement. That's why this process and this engagement is incredibly important. It gives everyone the chance to have their voice heard. The purpose of the 507 planning process is to determine the service system vision and goals over the next 5 years and how to achieve those goals. Within that 5-year term, there are separate annual goals and we hope to achieve. Those annual goals are updated every year, which is the reason that the 507 strategic plan is expected to be updated and released every year. Everything we do and every decision we make is built around OPWDD's vision that people with developmental disabilities should be afforded the opportunity to enjoy meaningful relationships with friends, families, and others in their lives, experience personal health and growth, and live in the home of their choice and fully participate in their communities. We include this slide as an important reminder to all of us of our mutual purpose as we begin the process for the years 2021 through 2026. Entering this planning cycle, OPWDD has set specific goals, and we would like to meet the overarching themes behind our planning. These include sustainability, that all eligible people will receive supports that can continue to be maintained well into the future. Equity, that all eligible people will receive supports based on their specific needs as determined using a fair and consistent process all across the state. And accessibility, that all eligible people will be able to access flexible services and supports that change as the person's needs change, and that those options will be explained in the language of their choice. And we also want to ensure that we are meeting those goals while providing services in the most integrated setting possible for each person. The challenges presented by the COVID-19 public health emergency are still impacting us all. Our direct support workforce and our service providers worked hard throughout the past year to keep people safe. Many people were isolated from family and friends. Students with disabilities struggled to participate in remote schooling. Family caregivers struggled to meet the needs of their loved ones without their usual day routines and supports. As we are emerging from COVID-19, there remain some very real challenges. Workforce shortages, which were already a concern prior to COVID, are even more critical. Prior to COVID-19, we were already experiencing significant growth in spending on many of our supports and services at rates higher than increasing to annual funding. a spending increase of about 6% annually per person per year in group homes on average, while the number of people receiving the services grew less than 1% each year. 5% growth annually on daily rehabilitation spending with less than 1% growth per year in people receiving the service. Supported employment spending per person grew on average of over 8% annually, while the number of people using the service remained the same. Agency-sponsored respite spending grew over 13% annually, with only a 2% growth in the number of people using the service. Self-direction spending remained the same per person. However, the number of people who participated in self-direction grew an average of nearly 36% year over year. As we enter the new post-COVID environment, we need to resolve the significant growth in spending we are already experiencing prior to the pandemic and look at ways in which we can provide supports to more people more efficiently. There are opportunities despite the challenges. COVID-19 has shown us that technology can help us to improve services. We have seen increases in the use of telehealth technology to help residential staff consult with medical staff about health of the residents, cutting down on unnecessary and risky emergency room visits. We have also used technology to connect people and help people continue building skills when in-person services can't happen. Cooperative programs, such as one run by the Capital Region BOCES, are examples of how we can begin to address the workforce shortage. A new direct support professional training program at BOCES, in conjunction with the New York Alliance for Inclusion and Innovation, gives low-income people who are unemployed or underemployed training through BOCES to become direct support professionals. Capital Region BOCES has also established a 2-year program where students can learn skills with the goals of becoming a direct support professional during the final 2 years of high school. In addition, federal funding being provided under the American Rescue Plan gives us additional opportunities to address some of the challenges we face. The federal government implemented the American Rescue Plan in 2021, which sets aside funding for home and community-based services through Medicaid's Federal Medical Assistance Percentage, FMAP, funding. This is being delivered in the form of a 10% one-time raise in the federal government's share of spending on the Medicaid program, starting April 2021 and extending through March 2022. The goal of the program is enhance, expanded, or strengthen home and community-based services. The rescue plan will provide one-time short-term funding within a 3-year window for the use of the funds. We are seeking your feedback to determine how the funding can best be used to help support people. Our initial plan is due to the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, in mid-June 2021. These forums are an initial opportunity to hear from you, and there will be additional opportunities after we submit the initial plan. Throughout the spring and summer, there will also be many opportunities for you to provide input into OPWDD's strategic plan. The input can be provided through the mail or through the new email address, planning@opwdd.ny.gov. These regional forums are just the starting point to the process. There also will be many sessions with organized stakeholder groups throughout the summer. Additionally, once we have a draft plan put together, there will be another organized effort to hear feedback on the draft plan in the fall of 2021. In the invitation we sent out to invite you to these meetings, we included several questions regarding areas where we are looking for feedback. Those questions were not meant to limit you. They were meant to get you started thinking about the process. The following slides will go over these areas a little bit further to help you understand where we are and where we need input from you moving forward to make sure your interests and concerns are taken into account. OPWDD serves people throughout their lifespan, from very young children who live at home with their families and who are primarily provided supports through their local schools, receiving only minimal services through OPWDD, to older adults who need supports across every area of their life, including housing. At all stages of people's lives, we want to provide the right level of supports so people can live meaningful lives as independently as possible as we meet the ever-growing demand for new services. As people age, their needs and interests change, and the focus of services must change also. Therefore, our strategic plan must take into account the needs to support families and develop the skills for children, promote independence, and support meaningful activities in the community and employment for adults, provide appropriate services as people age, such as increased support needs, retirement, and late life changes. Helping people to live as independently as possible while providing access to supports they need to meet their goals is the basis for OPWDD's housing plans. Our variety of housing supports currently range from housing subsidies that give options for independent living to settings offering different levels of support and supervision, such as smaller community group homes and much larger congregate settings. OPWDD supports approximately 38,000 people in residential settings, and an average of 1,200 new people move into OPWDD residential settings every year. The OPWDD housing subsidy is authorized for over 6,000 people statewide. A self-direction model with shared living, environmental modification, and assistive technologies is available for people to help maintain independence. Our goal is to continue and grow these existing opportunities while also looking at how we can better support people with complex and challenging needs. Not-for-profit provider agencies are our critical partners, providing approximately 80% of OPWDD's housing. 20% is operated by OPWDD. We continue to develop additional residential opportunities by issuing requests for proposals from provider organizations. The most recent RFP was issued in 2020, and awards for projects are occurring. There is a current activity that invites people in state-operated homes who have less challenging needs to consider a new living opportunity with a voluntary provider, which would in turn create an opening in a state-operated services for people ready to leave residential schools who have more complex needs. The 507 strategic plan will take into account these and other ideas in planning sustainable housing supports for the future. The COVID-19 public health emergency has shown us that day services need to be more flexible and better meet the needs of people we serve. While many people find teleservice to be a good alternative, it also did not work for many people as well. Below are a few of our findings in this area for consideration as we plan for the future of services. Person-centered planning must be done for each person to determine whether teleservices or in-residence supports will better meet their needs. A balanced combination of services that can support a person within their home and within the community would be the goal. Transportation can be a barrier to services and employment, so solutions must be sought. Vocational and social skills should be a component of all day services. The day habilitation structure could be more beneficial if it were more individualized, more focused on skills for independence, and took place in smaller groups within the community. In building the 507 plan, we also need to look at how we ensure the employment is the first option for people who want it, and how we can better prepare people for employment. To incentivize hiring, OPWDD has offered a back-to-work incentive to pay wages for a short term under the condition that the employer agrees to hire after the time period is over. We need to look at ways that might incentivize employers to hire people. Positions may need to be customized to offer employment opportunities for people of all abilities. To create an employment path for people to follow, all-day service providers could be encouraged to offer the community pre-vocational services option so that people in day habilitation could move on to pre-vocational services or pathways to employment, or gain employment skills and then move on to employment. Employment skills need to be trained to not only assist the person receiving services, but also negotiate and work with businesses on hiring. These are just a few examples of how employment programs could be improved upon moving forward. Self-direction offers the most flexibility and control over a person's services as possible. Self-direction is intended as a choice for anyone who is able to make their own decisions about their services or has chosen another trusted adult to help them. OPWDD is currently working on enhancing training and communication for support brokers, fiscal intermediaries, care managers, and support staff so that people have professional help available to help them self-direct. The new 507 plan should take into account how we improve upon these services even further. We have seen a lot of growth in the number of young children and their families looking for cross-system and residential supports over the last few years. This growth shows a need to grow community-based supports to make sure that children and their families are able to get the help they need, including the ability to support those children who are in crisis so they can remain at home with their families. Future planning should take into account the need to provide adult placement services for children leaving residential schools. Telehealth became a life-saving support through the COVID-19 public health emergency. At this time, there is work around extending that support beyond the health emergency and make it a more permanent support, and there are ongoing talks around policy and regulation changes that might be needed. OPWDD is also looking at the use of clinical services across disability types to see where changes should be made to match the need and demand. Making sure services are available to meet identified clinical needs is critical. OPWDD is also working with state and local mental health and hygiene partners to identify gaps in access to crisis supports and services, problem solve strategies to fill those gaps. We anticipate this being a large part of future planning. The initiative mentioned earlier, which helps people move from more restrictive to less restrictive housing, is one strategy we are currently using to make space available to serve people with more complex needs and to provide choice to ensure people are living in the most integrated setting, to make use of current vacancies and to open opportunities in state-operated homes for people who have aged out of residential schools and are waiting for adult service opportunities. State-operated residences can provide highly specialized services for people with complex needs. These are areas we anticipate will play a significant role in our strategic planning process. As care coordination organization, health homes have been operating for almost 3 full years now, and many of the early challenges with developing new organizations have been overcome. We now need to turn our attention to enhancing the quality of care that they serve. We want to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the health home model in helping people of all need levels to learn how to improve going forward. We want to look at this particularly for people with complex needs and those who live outside of congregate settings. Care management was established to improve the coordination and integration of services across multiple systems, including health, behavioral health, and developmental disability services, to help people stay healthy and avoid the need for crisis and emergency health care, and to establish ongoing supports timely. Over the next several years, we want to increase the care manager's ability to serve people with complex needs and better integrate care across multiple systems to focus on the whole person and not just their developmental disability services. As demand for service grows, so does the need to attract and retain a qualified workforce. OPWDD is partnering with providers of service and other organizations to begin building recruitment opportunities at the high school level and among non-traditional adult students. We have developed training opportunities in partnership with SUNY and are looking at additional ways to build staff retention. OPWDD is supporting the regional centers for workforce transformation to build competency, enhance training, and provide technical assistance. We need to increase recruitment efforts for clinical staff to provide important and much needed behavioral, nursing, and dental services. Innovations in technology and housing will not only increase independence for people we support, but will help us maximize our workforce during the ongoing shortage. Data collection is also part of ongoing effort to allow for targeted workforce strategies. These and other opportunities to strengthen our workforce will be crucial to the future sustainability of the system and will play a major role in the 507 plan. Now that we have set the stage, sharing OPWDD's goals moving forward, some of the challenges we face, and some of the opportunities we have available, let us turn to these stakeholder forums. The idea is to hear from you and get feedback on your vision for the 5-year plan and what topic areas are important to you. Your feedback will guide us as we begin drafting the 5-year plan next month. We will follow the 5 public forums that we are hosting with attendance at meetings arranged by different advocacy groups, where we will also get feedback on the 5-year plan, such as our regular public meetings with groups like Developmental Disabilities Advisory Council and Family Support Services Planning Council, and by meeting with numerous other representative organizations. Overall, we have about 30 additional opportunities to hear from others who are not able to attend these forums. If you have not already, I invited you to check out our new strategic planning page on the OPWDD website. You can get there by looking under About Us in the footer. You will find information related to planning process, current initiatives, and links to data. This page will be updated throughout the planning process as new information is available. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen so we can start hearing from you that have signed up to speak at this forum.
Thank you very much, Margaret. We are now at the part of the program where you will all do the talking. I'm going to read your names off one at a time. As I read your name, please unmute your microphone so that we can hear you and begin speaking. You will have 3 minutes. To help us keep on time and allow for all speakers to share remarks, you will see a 3-minute timer on the screen. As a reminder, if you haven't yet, you may share written remarks with your regional contact and your full remarks will be considered. And now we'll move to the first speaker. Allison Giangregorio.
Hello, good evening.
Evening.
To prepare for today, I have reviewed prior comments that I have made in the past. And at that time, my son Nicholas was 13 years old. He is now 20 and will be entering adult services in a year. My concerns for lack of behavioral services is even more concerning than when he was 13. I have watched OPWDD solution very closely unfold, and I am disappointed of how ineffective the solution has been and can only imagine the waste of much needed dollars. Tonight's forum is to focus on how a one-time investment, I checked my time, a one-time financial investment can improve the current system. And my fear is without fixing what is broken, this one-time investment will be like placing a bandage on a wound when you need a tourniquet and triage. I can imagine some will say that this is a bit overdramatic. However, with the creation of the CCOs and the promise of a health home has been one of the biggest disappointments to families, and individuals are no better off. My decision to select the basic plan only costing $247 a month versus $661 per month for my son to be in a health home where a family just answers questions and the promise of a robust system has never arrived. Individuals are no better off. A one-time investment cannot address the workforce crisis since this needs strong commitment from our legislators and governor. If you are lucky enough to find a BCBA that is willing to accept the Medicaid rate, since BCBAs clearly work with the school district at much higher rates, a solution that would cost no money is allowing a more flexibility in self-direction program by allowing BCBAs the ability to provide both direct and non-direct supports to the individuals and families, since there is also a workforce shortage in self-direction. And those with behavioral management needs have the hardest time finding staff, and it's often left the family alone. The thing that keeps me up at night is my son's safety. Cameras should be installed in all group homes across all settings to ensure the safety for both my son and those in charge of his care. There will always be those bad apples, and with no evidence, those bad apples will just go to other agencies causing more harm. A detailed self-directed roadmap for families is only available to those who are wealthy, since they are the ones that can only pay for expensive consultants. If the mystery was unveiled, many families may have the courage to go down the non-certified option. However, at the moment, families still feel certified placements are the only option. And I made my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for being the first speaker this evening. And the next speaker is Sue Platkin.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here to offer solutions to almost all of the questions OPWDD posed in announcing these forums. My name is Susan Platkin. I'm the mother of Ruth, who's 34. Ruth has used self-direction since finishing high school. She moved into an apartment with a roommate 5 years ago. They're now sharing a house. Ruth loves working at her job at Walgreens 2 hours a week, running with a running group at 8:30 in most Saturday and Sunday mornings, and getting together with friends to go bowling or have a picnic. With the assistance of staff, she shops, cooks, cleans her house, takes out the trash, regular stuff. Ruth also has Phelan-McDermid syndrome, a rare genetic disorder which causes her moderate intellectual disability and bipolar disorder. She needs supervision at all times because of her lack of judgment and behavior challenges. Of course, the solution I'm suggesting for many of OPWDD's systemic problems is to expand the use of self-directed services, including non-certified housing, to everyone who wants it, and to take the necessary steps to ensure its sustainability after parents are gone. Why? 1, self-direction has been shown to be cost-effective compared to traditional services. 2, because the work is one-to-one, self-direction widens the pool of people willing to do direct support. And because funding goes to staff salaries rather than overhead, employees are paid a more reasonable wage, decreasing turnover. 3, everyone with IDD will need some housing support after their parents die. We have no choice but to expand the range of places in which people can choose to live. 4, using self-direction, supports can be flexible and truly individualized, which is especially important for people who can't go with the flow, for example, those with autism. 5, self-direction ensures compliance with federal laws and regulations, ADA, Olmstead, and the HCBS settings rule. Finally, and it almost goes without saying, COVID has shown us the perils of congregate services. The good news, much of the framework for this transformation is already in place. However, more needs to be done. We need to eliminate the many impediments to non-certified housing by increasing the housing subsidy and establishing exemptions to the Nurse Practice Act for DSPs to start. We need to decrease procedures and paperwork that add no value. Most important, we need to take our heads out of the sand and figure out how to support people long-term. This is the existential issue for families and what prevents many from choosing self-direction. I have two specific suggestions for the FMAP money. One, create pilot programs to explore ways to support people in self-direction whose parents are unable to. For example, an enhanced broker model. Two, fund a program modeled on Money Follows the Person to assist people living in group homes who wish it to move into non-certified housing using self-direction. To close, if my daughter was in congregate care, I have no doubt she'd be spending much of her time physically restrained or chemically sedated. Instead, she's living a meaningful life far beyond what anyone thought was possible. Self-directed services need to be expanded to ensure access to all who want them. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And our next speaker is Leslie Feinberg.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, okay. My name is Leslie Feinberg. Some people know me as the face behind supporting our youth and adults network, dedicated to supporting families on the self-direction journey. OPWDD will hear from Soyan another time. Today I'm speaking in my role as parent. My husband and I, supported by services from OPWDD and a network of family and friends, encourage our 30-year-old son's goal of living, learning, and earning in the community where he grew up. I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts on ways OPWDD could strengthen its operations. Approximately 120,000 people receive services from OPWDD, yet OPWDD uses a one-size-fits-all approach for assessing its entire client base. If assessments are for the purpose of managing and prioritizing utilization of services, OPWDD should be assessing the providers of the services, not the person. I understand that one driver of a homogeneous approach is a desire for equity. There would be 3 different approaches to assessments geared to 3 different populations: those who live in group homes, those who live with their families and participate in agency-based day or pre-vote programs, and those utilizing self-direction with full budget authority. OPWDD would improve service satisfaction by reviewing its person-centered model in furtherance of its mission. A true person-centered assessment would ask, what does this person need in their environment so they can achieve their goals and feel like a contributing person in society? Is the person happy? Is the level of support sufficient to continue making progress on their goals? The current approach assumes there is something wrong with the person, so we, the non-disabled, have to fix them, and we have to keep assessing and monitoring them to be sure we are doing the right thing. Not surprising, the effect of this current assessment model simply makes people like my son feel bad about needing supports. And if he's making progress, there's the dread that the supports will be removed. And if he earns more money at his job, then his rental subsidy will be reduced. Nobody gets cured of their developmental disability. COVID showed the voids in the medical system. Consider the statistics shared about the medical comorbidities of the nearly 700 people living in group homes who perished due to COVID. Not enough doctors receive training to understand and treat people with IDD. FMAP funds should be used to fill this gap. I understand some medical schools have seriously 1 class devoted to IDD. That's not enough to develop and provide respectful bedside manner and understand the underlying mental health and medical conditions that are prevalent among our loved ones with IDD. Consider a partnership with the Institute for Exceptional Care. Stay true to OPWDD's mission. We help people with developmental disabilities live richer lives. Assess the providers and the environment. Stop using a medical model to assess individuals. Invest in the future of healthcare providers for people with IDD. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Russell Snaith.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening. Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Kastner, Director Stadnicki, thank you very much for this opportunity and forum. My name is Russell Snaith. I'm the father of 25-year-old Dylan, who lives in a group home. I'm also the founder of NIAD, the New York Alliance for Developmental Disabilities, with 6,000 members statewide, but I'm speaking as a parent tonight, as a father. I'm here to talk to you about one subject, and it's workforce. And, I know we're here to talk about a 5-year plan, but 5 years is a long way out when you have a workforce crisis today. And without a workforce, there is nothing. We don't have a field. We don't have services. We don't have service providers. There's nothing. This crisis reached a boiling point due to COVID, minimum wage, and unemployment benefits that pay more not to work. Perfect storm. But the IDD workforce crisis has always been there due to years and years of undervaluing and underpaying DSPs who are essential. This threatens the survival of the field and puts individuals at risk. I can honestly say that I reviewed the topics and I know them all, and I can't think of any topic more important than this. This is the existential threat right here. OPWDD leadership must urgently focus all of its efforts on creating a stable, sustainable workforce model. Keyword, sustainable. I'd like to offer some suggestions for how to address the workforce crisis and thus to see another 5 years plus. Immediately eliminate the disparity in pay between state, self-direction, and voluntary service provider DSPs. Voluntary service providers are disadvantaged, and they're 80% of the world, and they cannot compete, and they are effectively being defunded. We should flow the FMAP dollars to providers so that they can pay sign-on, stay, and spot performance bonuses, like a Heroes Award. That would be a very wise use of the money. We need to rescale rates based on acuity, complexities, and demands of cases. Providers who handle the more challenging, complex cases are subsidizing those who will not accept them. That has to stop. OPWDD must be an advocate and lobbyist for the funding they need and must make a data-driven case. It's up to the state to accurately measure demand and the levels of service required. Once you have a repeatable way to measure and size demand, you optimize the design and delivery of services around that. You don't cap the number served or the levels of service. You make the case for the demand that you are optimally positioned to provide supply. The numbers and data are staggering and alarming. Site-based day programs that have not come back. 80% staff vacancy rates for those trying to return. I said 80%. 60% turnover rate for DSPs, managers covering shifts and burnout and overtime. No business can sustain adversities and survive in the long term. Entry-level DSPs should be paid no less than $20 an hour. DSPs with 10 plus years of experience should be paid no less than $32 an hour. I realize fully that there is a prominent federal component to this equation. Last comments, but OPWDD must demonstrate efficiency, grasp of the data, and urgency in advocating for proper funding. The demand's not going away. With a budget of $209 billion in New York State has some depth in those pockets and choices. Remember the word choices. This doesn't come down to money. This comes down to priorities. And an IDD workforce and this population in this field needs to be a priority in New York State, and that'll solve our problems. That's what we have to focus on for 5 years, to have a workforce, so we'll be here in 5 years. Thank you very much for that opportunity.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Hallie Low.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. My name is Hallie Low, and I am the parent of two children with ID and DD. I have a disability myself, and I've worked in the field for over 20 years. I'd like to make certain points. The practice of the interchangeability of high-level executives between public agencies and private nonprofit agencies has created and continues to create a conflict of interest at the cost of the people. Government oversight offices cannot give proper oversight if the current director is the former CFO of the nonprofit, and vice versa. Two, the creation of the big problem with this, in my mind, with the creation of more and more of these double-dipping, paper-shuffling jobs at the expense of direct care workers, ComHab, home respite, et cetera. The CCOs are a great example of all this money being spent on that. Meanwhile, the programs are being dismissed. And there's such a repetitiveness in the cast the questions that are asked by the CAS assessment people and the care management people and the broken system people, they all ask the same questions. It's a completely repetitive and unnecessary to have so many people put together that document. And the money is just not going where it needs to go, which is related to point 2B. The practice of funding pre-voc and day habs on the basis of attendance must stop. It creates an unstable funding source for organizations, and that's one of the reasons why it was hit so hard during COVID. We know that many of the people who go to these programs need services that will be off-site or not the program doesn't provide, but like going to a psychiatrist or getting blood work done. So to base it on their attendance or one part of the day there is just ridiculous, and it needs to stop. Meanwhile, the paper shuffling jobs like the care management, they have a spacious 3,000 square foot office, one of many, with 100 plus computers and cushion chairs. But my son at his day program sits on an old plastic chair, and there's one computer in the whole place, which really has to go also speak to the issue of funding of the workforce, because not in the sense of people who are working for our agencies, but of the work that they're going to find for our children. They talk about the pre-voc programs, but the pre-voc programs are still based on focus on work like stock work and such, which is going out of, is not going to be around in 5 years. So why are there more computers? Number 3, reconsideration of how funds are spent from the start. There's so much money is spent in the first 18 years. We need to coordinate better between OPWDD and the New York Department of Education, New York State Department of Education, and to create also a more seamless transition between going from high school into adult services. Number 4, the use of first-person narrative in life plans when they're not written by the individual or their representative, even with the so-called input, is unethical and is an example of systemic fraud that needs to end. It benefits the interests of the organizations over the rights of the individuals. And with this upcoming legislation regarding the supportive decision-making, which gets rid of the court altogether from the process, is really adds to the problem with putting words in people's mouths and making it sound like that when they purposely will make a narrative that is in the interest of OPWDD or the interest of the agencies and not a true assessment of the people's problem or needs, rather.
Thank you. If I could just jump in, we do have several people to get through today. So I just wanted to encourage you to make sure that you send your full remarks into your contact, and those absolutely will be considered.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ellen Alexander.
Hi. My name is Ellen Alexander, and I have been advocating for appropriate services for the autistic population since my 52-year-old son was diagnosed 50 years ago. Although the progress has been slow, much has been done to improve the lives of the people we are speaking about here today. I was involved in 1979 in having autism added to the education law, and I was involved in creating a 12-month education, among many other things that happened. Now, I wanted to talk about the DSPs, but rather than spend my time on that, I think I'm going to defer to what Russell talked about and just ditto it and go on to the next area that I wanted to discuss, which is serving complex needs of individuals. The safety from abuse and neglect is essential for people with complex needs who often can't communicate or testify and thus become targets for the few workers or housemates who take advantage of them. Why are so many allegations returned as unsubstantiated? Cameras are a necessity in the common areas of all group homes. Many people who live in a group home today have severe limitations. Their needs outweigh any concerns for privacy. Cameras need to be available for review when there is an allegation. That's just the beginning. We're working with the legislators to get this required, and we would like to have OPWDD and family support in getting cameras in the homes. Self-direction and the needs for self-direction are new to me. I had no help all the years my son was growing up at home. At the age of 16, we started working with a non-for-profit, and by the age of 23, he was in a group home. That's over 30 years ago. And we are so blessed that that agency exists and that that group home exists. Self-direction is not a long-term solution. It's a stopgap for some and possibly a disaster for others. As children age, so do parents. To create self-direction homes is duplicating a good system that currently exists with our non-for-profits. Again, we're diverting monies. Improve what we have instead. And in closing, with the needs of people we support increasing, OPWDD needs to have a better plan to provide support and revenue for non-for-profit providers so that the level and quality of services do not diminish. Money needs to be allocated better for house modifications, enhancements, staffing, meeting individual needs, and equipment. I wanted to add that my son at the age of 40 started to learn and communicate through using a letterboard with a communication partner. He was locked into a body prior to that. Today, he has the ability to have more opportunities due to his ability to communicate. Actually, today, he stated, using the letterboard, each autistic person deserves learning that they are smart. I would love to see OPWDD open up more of the new methods for our people.
Thank you. And we'll move to Karen Azarian.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Very well.
Thank you. Commissioner Kastner, the issue that I'd like to raise tonight is how OPWDD measures and makes public the extent of current unmet need. There are institutional motivations for unmet need to go unacknowledged. The result is a lack of transparency that prevents us from identifying and shoring up the weak points in OPW's system of care. In a culture where shortcomings remain hidden, any strategic plan that you write will fail. In the current approach, OPW doesn't share information on how long it takes for people to get approved for a service, and then how long it takes for that service to be provided. How many residences are understaffed, and by how many hours? These are basic measures of unmet need, but they create cost shifting whose impact is harder to predict. I believe at the first forum, you said that self-direction increased by 36% year over year. I'm not surprised. In Long Island, I've been told that ComHab staff earn $15 an hour compared to the $25 an hour they can earn in self-direction. My brother was approved for ComHab almost 3 years ago and was never able to find the service. So he became part of that 36% when he applied for self-direction 2 months ago. If his care manager has an average caseload, he shares her with 35 other people. While we wait for approval, I spend 10 hours a week taking him running because his house is understaffed by 30 hours a week. If underfunding is the root cause of a program failure, substituting that program with a different underfunded one won't succeed either. Yet that seems to be what happened when site-based DayHab was replaced by program without rules. This is what we fear OPW intends to do with residential care, when it touts family care as the next innovation, or with the CAS, where a lack of transparency can turn it into an unreviewable cost-cutting tool that prevents people from accessing services. OPW has a duty to care for New Yorkers with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Comprehensive, granular data provides the basis for arguing for more funding in the executive budget. It is a top-line alert to crises and trends in the system. It gives stakeholders confidence that decisions are being made on a rational basis. And to the extent that OPW collects, analyzes, and shares this data with us before it releases its draft strategic plan, it will be our first sign that you intend this strategic plan to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just going to pause for one moment. Okay, thank you. And our next speaker is Stephen Fleischer.
Okay.
Oh, wait a second. Wait, let me just pick it up.
Thank you for when we give testimony for a 5-year plan. My name is Steve Feister. I am an advocate for people with disability. I am a member of SANI. I'm a parent of a advocate chemical independent law. I'm also a goodwill ambassador for SANI. I live in my own apartment in Commack, New York. I have support with me all the time. I'm here today to tell you why I think why self-directing one of the best gifts that OPWDD for New York City. I have self-directing in 2004, where it was a fire program. In fact, I gave testimony in 2005 and for a 5-year plan, and it was I said, City Commissioner, he put most money into different group program and only a small amount into new group home. So all people have real rights, like me. Now I know there are over 10,000 people in California. Thank you for listening. Group home may be right for some people, but I know it was not right for me. I am seeking a goal people who will like me. Here is here are top reasons. 1, there is not enough staff in group homes to support people to do whatever they want to, especially if they or some people need a lot of support, or other who don't have they can't make it at ELR. 2, why when self-directing you can pick and hire your own staff, you get to really know how to support you. You get to live wherever you want to live with support you need without overprotecting you or following rules that Ailey tells them to do. You get to do what you want to do with the day with the support you need. You get to get a job that fits with your skill and hire staff to support you as with any job near you. You get to have a real life. So again, OPWDD in 2001, keep putting money into get program to a budget for self-directing so people can have real life in your community. I need your promise that we do not go back to the old time. Even when parents get older, I know that people like me never want to go back to a group home. You will continue to hear from us because we found a good way. We did not want to go back. Thank you for your time.
And thank you very much for your comments. And our next speaker is Allison Starkman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to give suggestions to be able to strengthen support for our loved ones. My name is Allison Starkman. I am the legal guardian for my beautiful 36-year-old sister, Lauren, who receives supports and services through OPWDD. The question that all of us think about all the time, what happens when I am gone? 7 years ago, I was faced with that very question after our mother passed. I could have explored a group home option given both our parents were no longer here. I wanted my sister to have a voice, for her to decide how she wanted to live and to be supported. I researched and found self-direction. The premise of self-direction is very good. However, there are significant flaws that are not person-centered at all. Many people have much unused dollars left in their budgets. However, those dollars cannot be put to the areas that will help foster independence and allow them to successfully live in their communities. The rent subsidies have not increased since 2012. They are way below the HUD guidelines. It is almost impossible for people to sustain without financial assistance from their families, many of which do not have the ability to do so. I have recently heard a person say, this time next year, I will have to decide whether to cut out food or medicine, as I cannot afford to have both and pay my rent. As an advocate, a broker, a caregiver for my sister with IDD, as well as a human being, this is heart-wrenching to hear and needs to be a wake-up call for all of us. First recommendation, increase the housing subsidies to the HUD guidelines so people do not have to end up in environments that are not suitable for them or homeless shelters because there are no other viable options. Second recommendation, in the self-direction budget under IDGS household line, lift the cap of $1,500 and allow a person that needs additional funds to be able to access them in the event they need to move. If you increase the subsidies so people could live in the community and self-direct, the next question is, who is going to be overseeing when the caregiver is no longer able to do so? I am the only caregiver left for my sister. What happens to her when I am gone? Enhanced brokering is a service delivery model that we at the Mid-Island Y JCC in Plainview, New York launched right before the pandemic started and allows for a great amount of support given the caseloads are significantly smaller. Each broker works with approximately 8 to 12 participants, finding quality staff, training staff, overseeing staff, assisting with reimbursements, burdensome paperwork, advocating, working with the person to access a broad array of connections in the community that will further enhance their quality of life. One person dedicated to support the person to reach their full potential, even when the primary caregiver ages and is no longer able to do so, backed by a well-respected nonprofit agency. Recommendation, we need funding to be able to continue to grow this pilot program to support many more people. Due to the pandemic, we need support. We would assist other agencies as well as independent brokers. Some people have to give up self-direction and go to the group home direction because it is too much for some families to keep up with. This also addresses a significant question, what happens when I am gone? I hope OPWDD will please consider assisting us to assist others and work together to grow the sustainable model. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Lisa Krebs-Borgen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity to provide my input this evening. As a full-time self-direction broker, an advocate for over 20 years, and a mom of 2 amazing daughters with special needs, I live and breathe this 24/7. My daughter Brittany is 24 years old, nonverbal, non-ambulatory, and has seizures. My daughter Jessica is 19 years old, is on the autism spectrum, has behavior issues, and is also nonverbal. While my daughters may be clumped together under complex needs, they are very unique and their needs are very different. That is why it is so important that the individual, personal-centered planning and the least restrictive environment where they're safe always comes first. I will be submitting a more in-depth testimony, written testimony, with my recommendations on the plan and the FMAP. But tonight, I'd like to emphasize the key points: the need of housing and self-direction. Self-direction is a great program where I have personally witnessed so many individuals building their independence, advocating for themselves, getting jobs, and living the life they want and have a right to. But like everything else, they need to change with the times. The housing cap has not been increased in over 10 years. $13.39 is unrealistic in Long Island. I have one family whose rent has increased so much that they no longer can afford to live in the rented home. At the same time, There is no way for them to move out because there is no budget line to allow moving expenses and a security deposit. One recommendation is to remove the cap on household goods and services and allow these expenses to be included in this line. Provide more flexibility than more restrictions. The caps need to be removed and certain budget lines increased. Second, housing in the least restrictive and safe environment. My girls still live at home with me, but COVID made my hopes for their future so much bleaker. I've always been positive and thought that by the time my girls would reach and are ready for a living in the community, there would be options for 24/7 care. But seeing how the certified housings were so badly affected, you can't imagine how concerned I am at this time. I urge you to listen to families and propose, focus on the individuals and their least restrictive environment in which they are safe. The 5-year plan needs to focus on different housing options for all. I was happy to see that Dr. Kastner mentioned that OPWDD will increase access to residential services in the most integrated settings by expanding the options. It is going to take creativity, thinking out of the box, and individuals and families' input to make this happen. I hope OPWDD will support all this. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move to Sari Novak.
Oops. Sorry. Can you see me? Yes, hi.
Hello. We can't see you, but we hear you clearly.
Okay, hold on. Can you see me now?
No.
No?
Oh, now we do, yes.
Okay. I guess I start now.
Yes. Yep, go right ahead. Thank you.
Okay. This information is not for boasting. I share with the hope of a broader picture will be seen. My name is Sari. I am 53, and I was diagnosed with Asperger's 7 years ago. I am a proud, successful businesswoman who owned 2 daycares and a preschool and a martial arts school for almost 30 years. But my proudest accomplishments are my children. I have a 30-year-old son and a 23-year-old daughter. My daughter is autistic too, and childhood schizophrenia. It is relevant to mention I grew up in institutions. Can I comfortably say things are so much better? That's a question. From my experience, yes, but on a whole, and that brings me to evidence-based versus clinical base. I have now lived and experienced every aspect within the system as a child, an educator, a parent, an individual, and a legal guardian. And I can adamantly say things are not right. This meeting tonight is because federal guidelines state and Treasury urges that recipients of funds engage with the relevant communities in developing plans. Okay, now I'm going to be confused because I was just writing this. There is a two-way mirror on one for the public and one not. First, there is no accountability. When the Justice Department is called, they send it back for the agency to investigate. Second, people are offended because they feel they give 100% of their job. Well, I teach many students who go home and practice for hours giving blood, sweat, and tears. But when you practice a technique wrong, it can never be right. And now I'm going to be confused because I didn't finish. So I have 35 seconds, 34. My point is, I would want to propose that there has to be transparency. In the daycare, you have to, they come to your daycare and you get inspections. And that goes on the internet. So you feel more propelled to make sure everything's in order. When you're a restaurant, you get inspected and you have an ABC in a restaurant. And I feel that someone said tonight that we are always looking on children or adults, the individual, but there is no transparency with the actual agency. There is a monopoly within, I do better if I speak than read. There is a monopoly within the agencies. And if you're stuck in an agency, there's not so much more you could go. And I think that's what OPWDD needs to start looking at. And people just keep fighting because my daughter was in a group home and they also didn't want her to go to an apartment that wasn't certified, and she's now in a non-certified apartments with Selfdirection. So.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. And just as a reminder, if you had additional comments, you can send those to your regional contact and everything will be considered.
I hope changes will be made.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Lisa Fleischer.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to help you craft your 5-year plan and your proposal for the FMAP funds. My name is Lisa Fleischer, and I am the parent of a 42-year-old man who you just met a little while ago, who has thankfully been supported through Selfdirection since 2004. We were one of the pioneers helping to craft Selfdirection after a very challenging foray through agency-provided services. I have continued to be active within the advocacy movement because I believe that everyone who chooses to live in the community should have the opportunity to do so with the individually designed supports that they need, including those people with complex support needs and those who do not have strong family networks to support them. Self-direction enables people to have quality of lives. I will restrict my comments to 3 major points today. Number 1, the mindset of OPWDD. In a recent distributed OPWD guideline regarding the new procedures for seeking housing subsidies, applicants were asked to describe how the individual had the capacity to live independently. First, everyone served by OPWDD is by definition an individual with a developmental or intellectual disability and is assumed to need supports, i.e. not to be able to live independently. Second, the concept of capacity is contradictory to the thinking in the field of IDD for the past 20 years, where it's agreed that IDD should not be viewed as an inherent limitation in the person, but rather an assessment of the intensity of supports that the person needs to meet their goals. Living in the community cannot be seen on a continuum correlated with the individual's perceived capacity. It is incumbent on OPWDD to recognize that there are many people currently thriving through SD, living in their own apartments with the intensive, individually designed supports that they need to be safe and to thrive. Are their budgets higher than the average budget? Sure, but still substantially less than their historical costs or comparative costs in provider IRAs. Give people the supports they need to live where and with whom they choose. A win-win for individuals and the OPWDD budget. Number 2, this recommendation pertains to both the 5-year planning and the FMAP dollars. We, the parents, are aging. The traditional alternative when someone is aging or no supportive families is agency-provided group homes. As I continue to age, I plan to age in place, in my home, in my community, with the supports that I may need. While group homes are a personal choice for some individuals, it is not viable for others. We must find a way to provide enhanced supports to take over some of the many roles that families now do. One such model has been called enhanced brokering or super brokers. Please take this opportunity with the FMAP money to explore some demonstration projects regarding super brokerage and consider building this into future waivers. One very last point. In regard to choice, we also need to find ways to increase the supports when adults with IDD choose to continue to live in their family home and community. Please consider supporting paid neighbor or live-in caregiver and increase respite to support families. Thank you for considering these options as we all continue to strive towards equitable, diverse, accessible, and flexible services in the most integrated settings for people with IDD in New York. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will move to Karen Lund.
Okay, cool. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All righty. Okay, so I am the mother of a self-direction participant, and tonight I'd like to talk to you, everybody about a specific program called LifeMap. It is a life management assistance program, and it is offered by AANE, which is the Asperger and Autism Network. It is a very effective online coaching program that my son has actually utilized in the past year, but unfortunately it's not yet covered by the self-direction program. So I'm hoping that with this, and whatever the funding is we have now, the federal funding or some other funds, that it could be considered something that self-direction and OPWDD would cover. So I'll tell you quickly a little bit about it. LifeMap coaches are professionals. They're social workers, psychologists, special ed teachers, and they have received intensive, what they call Asper coach training in how to work with ASD folks. LifeMap coaches are specialists who go above and beyond what the typically lesser skilled ComHab workers can do. That's been my experience. This intensive, highly individualized and very effective coaching has helped my son more readily move towards his goals, decrease his anxiety, increase his independence, and increase his self-esteem, all very important things. So actually in the past year, our LifeMap coach has helped my son set up a system to pay his bills, his apartment rent, and his utilities, which he could never do before, would drive us crazy. What else? He has started to cook his own meals rather than getting takeout all the time, which is very unhealthy. And my son is a coach, and his coach have also started to further develop his interest areas with the goal of finding a job related to that eventually. So from my experience, I found that LifeMap is a very effective program that my son and many others in the self-direction program could benefit from. But the hitch right now is that we have to pay it out of pocket. It's $120 a week, right? But the program is not covered by insurance. So I'm asking OPWDD to please consider perhaps an amendment to the federal waiver, or maybe a pilot program, or whatever these additional funds you have available now to fund this valuable program, which I've found through my own experience of using it through the self-direction budget. And basically, thank you very much for your time and your consideration of my request. Oh, and I forgot my little thing. So if you didn't catch the name of it, it's called LifeMap, and that's the website, lifemap at aane.org. If you want to learn more about it for yourself, and again, hopefully you guys will cover it at some point, because it's a super duper program. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And next is Trish Calandra.
Great, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Hi, everybody. First, I need to thank all the parents that have previously spoken. You make this definitely worthwhile. So I greatly appreciate all the parents that keep me inspired every day. So my name is Patricia Calandra. I'm the proud mom also of 2 adult children on the autism spectrum. Jenna, who is 26, and Joey, who is 29. I'm also a self-direction broker and a housing navigator. I have to say that the term person-centered is brought out and written into language of life plans and policy, but this is not truly occurring. It is kind of like a lip service and the language of social determinants of health that will be soon taking over. Self-direction just in the last 8 years has changed from a program where someone was able to have more freedom of choice to an overly regulated pre-approval machine. The need for DSPs and the long-term need, which has been discussed at length, I am going to choose not to speak to that issue. But when it comes to housing within OPWDD and the recent training materials to care managers, it clearly states invest some time now to find housing or spend a lot of time later resolving issues. So as well as the residential settings must be selected by the individual from among setting options that are documented in the person-centered service plan or your life plan. I have plenty of people that we write that language in and it just kind of gets blown over. Today in self-direction, there is so much paperwork for a pre-certification packet that has become just more checklists and documents that impede the process and does not bode any person-centeredness or social determinants of health for the people OPWDD is supposed to be committed to helping, along with the anxiety it's creating to find and submit these documents, especially in a timely way. The housing subsidies, as mentioned, are to follow the HUD funding that have not been increased since 2012, while the costs of housing have increased over 30 to 50% or even more on Long Island. And people are priced out. And if they can manage it today, within 2 to 3 years, as people have said, they are again priced out after the landlords raise their rent year after year. We definitely need to find innovative ways to create and properly fund housing with housing stakeholders and partnerships at the local and the county levels. This is where some of the FMAP money should be going. When looking at some lines in the self-direction budget, we need waiver language changes that OPWDD has self-imposed in their plan submission to CMS. This can be some cap removals, especially for categories like IDGS. There's no need to add funding here. We're just making the budget truly work in a person-centered way so people can access what they need and use the funds that are available within their PRA. Adding some technology solutions for independence also needs to be explored and added. Household goods and services should include upkeep to the home like certified group homes have allocated to them. If a self-directed individual needs a roof repair or fixing of a heating unit, they're responsible for the repair, where the group homes have that funding available to them. The Nurse Practice Act needs to be reviewed and clarified for those that need medication management. While acknowledging some meds are complex, most of the people that are in self-direction do not need that high level. And if a person needs to take medication with assistance, this should not be a deterrent for independent living. The long-term sustainability and planning or mechanisms needed for self-direction continuity needs to be addressed for when the parent and natural supports are no longer available to manage the day-to-day business of their child, or when they are no longer here holding all the pieces together in what's become a very broken system. So thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Suzanne Marcus Solomkin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We can.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity for input on improving OPWDD support. Our 32-year-old daughter, Jenny, lives with us, participates in self-direction, is pursuing her undergraduate studies at her own pace, not at the pace of Access VR, expects to return to her part-time work next fall, and yearns to live independently in our community with support in her own apartment. We have 2 points we respectfully like to request you to consider in your plan. I'll try not to be repetitive because you've heard a lot of them. There seems to be a theme here. Our daughter, like others, firstly, will sadly not outgrow her condition. The needs are lifelong and may increase as these kids or young adults grow up. Parents of children with special needs often care for their children well into adulthood alongside their own aging process, like ourselves. This is typically much longer than society parental expectations are. While all parents worry about their grown children, our daughter's challenges present us with extraordinary worries. Many adult children with disabilities rely on their aging parents for all types of support, from emotional to physical to financial. These parents are on fixed income and may be ill-equipped to appropriately and safely care for their adult child. Yet, in an emergency, we know we do what we must for our children, regardless of our ages, our conditions, and our circumstances. Recognizing the paucity of funds for system-wide increases, we request that OPWDD consider individualized approaches to disbursement of one's budget while staffing emergencies, and they do arise, and funds are already allocated for staff. This does not necessarily increase a budget, in self-direction, but offers greater flexibility with staffing options in an effort to keep individuals safe. Meeting complex needs of adult children with disabilities when parents themselves are elderly and are in failing health and living on a fixed income becomes a new challenge and can set back an entire extended family. When there are extenuating circumstances and an individual is left without staff, parents step in as what we say are the unpaid staff. We respectfully request that OPW create guidelines of extenuating circumstances to determine when such instances occur that a parent could be considered staff for a limited time and for emergency purposes when no other staff is available. Without an increase of funding, this offers a more humane, diverse, and realistic way to disperse funds with caps, of course, put in place. This is one way we can further individualize our supports. Secondly, and you've heard it, there's a crisis in housing for people like our daughter. She yearns to live in an apartment in our area where she grew up. There are waiting lists of many years, decades of affordable, accessible housing, and the demand grows. The reimbursement rates, you know, have not increased since 2012. This is not true. The housing subsidy package is confusing and cumbersome, anxiety-producing, and insufficient. We know that. This has created an impossible situation, however, and a bleak outlook for our daughter to ever live independently with support. Housing must be realistically appropriated within the limited set budget. She enjoys volunteering, her part-time work in the community, and yearns to remain here. Housing subsidies must reflect the current market, values, and rents in our community. Rents vary widely throughout the state. Please don't tell me by the care manager that she should go live in Oneonta, New York. We know Long Island is expensive, but this is where she was born and raised. Let's diversify housing support types and options. Please work with legislators to create housing units for those on fixed incomes and create housing allotments for those who offer so much back to their community. I will say that the town of North Hempstead with Town Supervisor Judy Bosworth did create a DAC, Disability Advisory Committee, and their first mission is housing. Let's work together in each of the towns of Long Island to see, and the state, to see what can be done at the local level, and I'm happy to help. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay. And we'll move to Matt Hoeffel.
Wait, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, Gina. My name is Matt Hoeffel. I wanted to revise. Oh, wait, wrong one. Hello, my name is Matt Hoeffel. As you know, there is an ongoing staffing crisis for people living in both certified settings and for people in self-direction. I have both. The group home I live in seems to always be short-staffed. Finding staff coverage has been a difficult or unsuccessful. When this happens, it limits our daily opportunities. Let me give you one of many examples. Every weekend, we are offered recreational opportunities. One weekend, the choice was rock climbing. That is something that I cannot do or want to do. Due to staff shortages, I only had one option. I had to go on the outing and watch because there is not enough staff to have the support at home or to do another recreational activity. I asked OPWDD to promote a strong workforce by creating an educational track in schools to learn about working with people with disabilities. I want DSPs to have pride in their career. The workforce shortage in self-direction has also been very challenging. I have one staff person. If he is unable to work with me, I have no backup. My only option is to sit at home and knit, but I do not want to do that at times. I ask OPWDD to explore ways in which the regional and local staffing resource centers and databases can be used to help in the timely hiring and sharing of staff for people in self-direction. Finally, I'd like to request OPW to restore funding to provider agencies for therapeutic leave. This cut and has had a significant on me and many of my friends' well-being. I, like many others, was told we were told and written a letter saying that we should limit time we spend in our homes, including trips to see our families and friends. Because of the cut, I, like many others, are unable to visit our friends and families who live abroad. These visits make us happy, so please let us visit home again and stay outside the house for when we want to stay. Thank you, and kudos to citizens because they helped me a lot. And the OPW, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Roy Probian. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Roy?
Trying.
Oh, excellent.
Just sorry about that. Hold on.
I think he's frozen.
I'm fine. Are you hearing me? You hear me now?
We can hear you now. You're breaking up a little bit, but why don't you give it a try?
Okay. It's so long now. It's saying that I'm not muted, so it should be all right. And I keep losing my. I'm a single parent since my bride of 50 years, Arlene, passed away 10 years ago. We had 3 adult sons with IDD, including autism. We are a Fragile X family. They have lived at home all their life. Roy Jr., who would be 60 this year, died under tragic circumstances in our home almost 3 years ago. Michael is 58, Glenn is 53, and will still live with me at home on self-direction, and we are in the process of having them live in a group. Arlene and I spent our entire life advocating for them and others in school and adulthood, and I persist. These 507 plan forums held by the commissioner are the first of its kind in over 40 years to which I have testified. This is an important first step to improve transparency, not only in the planning, but must include the implementation of services on an ongoing basis. OPW started with the virtual conferences on the COVID activities, and the data was good, but needed to be gathered and shared much sooner and be much more detailed. So stakeholders can be part of the process from the beginning, but it is a start. Data overall is crucial for real transparency, such as the value of approved services for our loved ones compared to the cost of services actually delivered. With 10 years of draconian cuts going back before your term, Commissioner, and flat budgets which starved the system of care for our loved ones, how is it possible that OPWDD has underspent hundreds of millions of dollars of authorized budgets over that time? This must stop now, and every last thin dime must be spent on services. OPW has lost its mission to provide care to those with complex, multiple great IDD need as job one, rather than serving the greatest number of individuals possible given the zero-sum budgets state provides. We need to return to that mission. The greatest threat to the system of care is workforce. Staff shortages run as high as 40% vacancy rate for our providers, and some of them only have 2 payrolls left in the bank. The recent windfall from the federal government in FMAP revenue must be used now, say to give hiring or retention bonuses. 7 years ago, our beloved DSPs were paid 50% over the minimum wage. This year, they have gotten to the minimum wage. Next year's budget from the governor must restore that equity. This is beyond a crisis or an emergency. It is a critical chronic emergency which, if not remedied, will result in the start of the collapse of the system of supports for our loved ones in weeks, if not months at the latest. Finally, shrinking our residential group home services must cease while there are so many of our loved ones with great needs who are still at home with aging parents, like me, requiring an opportunity. Also, the increasing need of our loved ones as they grow older. Not to mention 21,000 individuals that will be arriving seeking OPWDD services over the next dozen years or so. It makes no sense to be closing group homes. We need to develop flexible and selective, less restrictive residential opportunities by enhancing supportive living and create other modalities to allow more independent living options as an alternative. In closing, fund for the future, raise the wage, stop the cuts. Hubert Humphrey has said, the moral test of government is how it treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, those who are in the twilight of life, the aged, and those in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, the disabled. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move to Carol Abrado.
Hi, my name is Carol Abrado, and I thank you for the opportunity to be able to voice my concerns this evening. My daughter Tony is 36 years old. She's deaf and has Down syndrome. She lives at home and has attended Millneck Manor Day Heb program for the past 17 years. Millneck Manor's Day Heb program is a perfect fit for her as they utilize sign language, and Tony, her peers, and staff can communicate. Besides her home, this is the one place that she can fully be understood and her needs be met. Since the start of the pandemic, she's only been attending virtually. And although I'm thankful that she's had a connection and learning experience all these months, she is now and has been for quite some time fully vaccinated and ready to return to in-person attendance. I have seen her emotional, social, overall well-being suffer with having no in-person interaction with her peers. She relies on her program for socialization, among many other things. It is truly her home away from home. The reason she can't return is because capacity in the vehicles used to transfer her to program is only at 50% as per OPWDD guidelines. And now that the vaccination rate on Long Island is above 70% and near that for the whole state, and the infection rate is such a low level, I'd like to know when these restrictions will be lifted so she can begin attending the program she loves so much and that has helped her have a full and well-rounded life. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Jerry Athena.
Yes, here I am. Good evening, Dr. Kasler again. Everybody in the group, I'm going to paraphrase some of my things that I've written, but I've sent them in. Employment. First, we must be acutely aware that we cannot expect an individual to live independently in the community if their support staff cannot afford to live in the community. We need to make better use of the Hire the Veteran program that has been established in the OPWDD website. We need to have specific personnel, employees use the various military bases where the veterans exit and capture their interest in our field upon exiting the military. DSPs, as everyone has probably said, we need a living wage for the job market. The people who work in the DDI population hear the calling. We have staff and agencies that are working 30 years with our loved ones. We need to pay them and others what they want for a decent salary. We need to give them crisis bonuses that they have weathered the pandemic. Crisis on Long Island is in crisis. On a daily basis, the LIDDRO deals with many people in extreme crisis with presently little available. An example of an individual in a hospital bed for 6 months because there was no room is just not acceptable. We need hospital psychiatric care in Long Island that will enable our individuals to get the medications they need and be able to transition properly into adequate housing. How do you take a person from a hospital bed and put them in a residence without assistance first? The objective, expand START psychiatric beds to 15, thus eliminating lengthy hospital costs, creating the transition ability to live in an arrangement of choice. Use the Melville cottages for these beds, and that would eliminate hospital visits and provide a cohesive medical care. Giving START the ability to handle immediate crisis individuals who have not yet applied for the service, and adding psychiatrists and psychologists to the START program. 3, work. Many of our individuals long for the job. There is a shortage of employers, not employees. Creation of partnerships with major companies here on Long Island has not materialized. Access VR may be the starting point for individuals to enter the job market, but the opportunities are not nearly as many as needed. Access VR contracts with various agencies to fulfill the obligations. There is not a continuum of services here. There's a lot of paperwork, but no boots on the ground in the job market. The objective, the job development opportunities cannot be created without the staff to get out there and create them. The only recourse is to put money into this area as an investment in the future of people OPWDD is serving. Transportation. Long Island needs adequate transportation. You must call 7 days in advance for a ride anywhere. Nassau and Suffolk bus companies have run the transportation since Medicaid taxis were eliminated. It takes a long time to get anywhere, and the bus stops at the Nassau-Suffolk line. They must deal with people waiting again for the bus. The objective, costs can be reduced and efficiently increased by transportation by using Uber and Lyft. Creation of an easier transit between counties and having direct routes instead of bus lines would be more convenient. People would be able to get to work timely, and vehicles can be accessible to all. And I'm done here, but I have housing and IRAs, and that's it. So it's all in paper.
Great. Thank you very much. And next is Stephen Barsh, excuse me.
How are you doing this evening?
Very good.
Couple of different things. As an advocate, I think you guys need to do better with the guidelines. That has to be more efficient. Also, transportation sucks. You know, we have to pay and Able Ride and SCAT all over the place. Plus, the DPs are not getting enough money. That's pretty bad. And also, as an advocate, you know, you guys are, certain things have to be done better. You know, more of these, more forums. You guys, get the word out. You know, my parents are getting older. They're in their 70s. My sister just passed away last year. After my parents pass away, what's going to happen to everybody else who has guardians or whatever? There has to be a better system in line. In this, in this time and age, minimum wage sucks. But you guys need to have more forums like this. As an advocate, I think we need to have a voice heard, because we go to Albany and we continue to fight on, because the parents don't do it. We do. We're the footwork. We go up once a year. You heard from other colleagues, other parents. We need to continue this. ICFs are tough. They're tough living out in Suffolk County, in Nassau County. But we need to be better in this. You guys dropped the ball where the guidelines, the mask wearing, the visiting, etc. It's wrong. You guys need to fix that for the next 5 years in case this happens again. You guys need to put a book out, some type of guideline. Say, okay, this is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. Make it simple for the blind, etc. That's you guys did that to us. I couldn't even see my parents or my sister in the hospital. She was in the coma. She passed away. I couldn't go up. My folks did, but not me. So why is that happening? Because that's you guys' guidelines. You guys have to change that in the next 5 years and do a better job. And et cetera, et cetera. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move to the next speaker, Leah Wasserman.
Hi, how are you tonight? Thank you to OPWDD for this opportunity. So many of you here have focused on housing and group homes, which are relevant to individuals who have aged out of schooling. I am grateful to all of you for shedding light on obstacles those of us a few steps behind you might face down the line. For a moment or three, I would like to focus on a point relevant to individuals whose children are a bit younger and are still in school. I was compelled to write in when I first received your email and saw the question that stated, how can the Self-Direction program better address the needs of the person and support for family caregivers? It has been a challenging year for everyone, but in particular for those families with special needs children. At the start of the pandemic, OPWDD made amendments and exemptions to allow for our children to have their needs better met. A prime example being telehealth. In the introductory remarks, Deputy Director Stadnicki accurately stated that people struggled to meet the needs of their loved ones. This is so very true, and sadly, OPWDD did not assist so many of us who were struggling to meet the needs of our children during an extraordinarily impossible time. My son, Sammy, is unable to stay home alone, although he is 19. He requires 24-hour supervision to ensure his safety and well-being. Despite there not being in-school sessions for a large portion of the last year, concessions were not made for families whose children were home during school hours due to COVID, including having COVID or being in quarantine. We were not allowed to bill for any ComHab hours during the school hours. This was financially and educationally detrimental to many families with working parents who had to make the daily decision of whether to go to work that day or assist their child with Zoom. This rule and policy is a travesty for families like mine who often had to make the impossible choice of, do I miss work today to ensure my child gets the education he is entitled to, or do I go to work so I can pay my expenses and have my child sit in his room alone without school or social interaction? This was particularly upsetting and angering since my budget would have been able to accommodate for my son to have the hours and help that he needed both educationally and socially while allowing for my husband and I to continue working. The other way to have alleviated this burden for families would have been to increase the cap on our family reimbursed respite line to allow for someone to come in to assist our child during those hours. But this too was not accommodated for. I appreciate the exemptions and amendments made, but feel additional changes need to happen to ensure that families receive the services they need and deserve and be able to provide for their families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our list of speakers for this evening. We'd like to thank you very much and remind you that if you have not sent your full comments in, please feel free to send those to your regional contact. And with that, I would like to turn the program over to Commissioner Kastner for closing remarks.
Well, thank you again for participating tonight. This has been the 5th of 5 forums, and I'll just generalize about them all. I think for OPWDD, it's been an opportunity to hear from many, many new voices. I'm particularly gratified that so many parents and individuals were able to speak. We meet with many stakeholder groups, but the opportunity to hear from 100, 120, or 150 families and individuals who I had not been familiar with, I think was really valuable to me, and I think will be extremely valuable to OPWDD as we begin to look at your comments. I know that for many of you, there's a lot of emotion in terms of what you've brought to us today. We've talked about the content that we've heard, whether people are concerned about housing or self-direction or DSP wages, but I want to find a way to not lose the feeling that you've brought and shared with us, the concerns, the worries, the fear, and sometimes hopelessness that many of you have expressed. So we're going to look very carefully at what you've said and try to honor what you've told us and to reflect that in the report. I hope that the draft that we prepare can be made available to you and that you'll be able to give us more feedback as you see the work progress over the rest of the year. So I want to thank you again for participating. I hope that you all have a good evening, and we look forward to sharing materials with you in the future. So good night and thank you.